The worst horror movie I ever saw was fucking great.
Hello and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Strayer and this is
John C. Myers.
And we are a horror franchise podcast discussing each film in popular and not so popular franchises. And today we are talking about Phantasm 2, the sequel to 1978. Nine's Phantasm. And that third voice right out of the gate correcting me is Michael Holloway from Dead When I Found Her and longtime friend of both John Myers and I. He also does the music for this show, the intro and the in memoriam music that plays at the end. Michael, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
Yeah. To start off, do you wanted to come on and talk about this one in particular? So, what do you have a certain history with Phantasm 2? Is it just I love it, or is there anything specific that goes along with your personal history with Phantasm 2?
I consider it a personal history movie. And first off, though, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Way back, I couldn't put a date on it, and I probably don't want to if I could. A friend of mine, Delano, he had been at Goodwill and kind of just coming up with weird Goodwill finds. And he came over and he had a VHS tape of Phantasm 2. And at the time, I'd never heard of it, had no idea what it was. I was probably, teenager of somewhere in my teenage years. And he was just like, look at this piece of shit. The ball is back. We laughed at that and we're like, okay, whatever. And so we threw it on that day. We're like, well, let's watch your stupid, shitty new movie that you got at Goodwill. And I'm sure we'll talk about it momentarily, but Reggie Bannister's early action sequence just hooked us immediately. and we were like, oh God, this is rad. We were very much sucked into it. Certainly, I knew Evil Dead 2 by then. So, I knew Sam Raimi that, but I still wasn't an aficionado at the time. So it's an early one for me. It goes way, way back. And then in my music, various pre-Dead When I Found Her industrial projects, when I was kind of getting, familiar with how to do that stuff, I sampled the crap out of Phantasm 2. In fact, I think Delano's VHS cassette is literally what I was sampling, because back then shit was harder to come by, and once I got a Kurzweil K2000 VX sampler, I'd hook it up to a little TV VCR unit. And I know every line of dialogue from this movie too damn well.
Yeah, there's a lot of quotable lines for sure.
Yeah, this is for me. I mentioned at the top of the show for the first Phantasm. I think I saw this one first on cable before I saw the first movie, because this one was absolutely on TBS, WGN, the 3:05 Saturday afternoon movie.
Must have been edited quite a bit.
Oh, definitely edited, but it was.
It was a half hour long.
Yeah, right. you don't forget the flying silver balls and the tall man when you're 10, 11, 12, 13 years older. I think I saw this before I saw Evil Dead 2, but I saw it on cable. So not quite the same, but those images are still pretty burned in the brain from being a kid.
That's got to be wild, because it's sort of like seeing Evil Dead 2 and then watching Evil Dead 1 and being like, why isn't this funny?
Right.
This is so different from Phantasm. Mm-hmm. That's got to be a little bit of a whiplash going the other direction. Because I certainly was like, oh, because I remember seeing this before, or I remember having seen this before, but I barely remember the movie at all.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, everything I loved about the first one is not in this one.
It's a similar comparison with the Evil Dead 1 and 2, because there's a huge time gap in between, just like with those. 79 for Phantasm, 88 for Phantasm 2. 9 years. Yeah. Reggie Bannister had quit being an actor.
Well, and it's funny because you think about, because obviously we did the Friday the 13th series, that horror in that time had changed so massively, because not only did you have the rise of the slashers with Jason and that, but then Freddy comes in and changes everything. And the popularity of Freddy definitely influenced what the studio wanted to do with this movie. Mm-hmm. Universal Studios basically got it because they wanted their own homegrown horror thing. They didn't have their own franchise. Everything they had, which I think at that point was I think they had Halloween, but that was something that was made somewhere else. Then they got sequels. They wanted just boom from the start. So they wanted Phantasm, and apparently like the head of Universal at the time was a huge Phantasm fan, and so was this vice president of acquisitions, Jim Jacks. It's like, oh, we'll just use Phantasm and it'll be great. But then they were like, yeah, don't do all the like weird, is it a dream or not? We need to know, because Nightmare on Elm Street audiences want to know when it's a dream and what's not.
Nothing dreamy, nothing unknown, nothing psychedelic, nothing people won't immediately understand. like, oh, okay.
Yeah. We love your work. Could you do it entirely differently, please?
Yes.
Right. It's perfect.
It does remind me, this comparison might be reaching a little bit, but it does remind me a little bit of the Alien and Aliens type of thing too, because first Phantasm is like slow, methodical to a point, scarier, I would say. Second one is like more guns, more action, more streamlined, and, arguably more just straight ahead entertaining.
Well, also there was the similarity where Don Coscarelli just went up to a whiteboard and wrote Phantasm and then added a dollar sign at the end.
Right.
And they went, why don't we call it Phantasm 2? And he went, well, that's a better title.
Okay, instead of Phantasms.
And Phantasms.
The story goes that Universal gave Coscarelli $3 million to make this movie, and he was like, holy shit, that is so much more than I had for Phantasm. Oh my God, I'm gonna make the best movie ever, right? Because Phantasm, I don't know what the budget was on it, but it was way less than $3 million. Meanwhile, that was the least amount of money Universal spent on a movie in the entire 80s.
It's amazing.
Yes.
But yeah, I wonder though, coming to that, though, that now you're doing a big studio movie, and yes, you have this giant budget. I wonder if how much of that gets sucked up in being a big studio movie. Whereas like before and it sounds like still, he had a lot of the same crew come back. He was able to get them. And there was a fair amount of like, everyone does their, kind of helps out, but not nearly with union rules or whatever, not nearly the same as when you were making a Phantasm. You have to pay actual actors this time, like James LaGrosse and whatever. It's a bigger production. So I wonder how fast that $3 million got sucked up.
No, it was James LaGrosse was it was his first role, so he would have not have yet been Ponytail Guy in Singles. So
that's true.
It wasn't until after
that's
Ponytail
the first
Guy
thing I think of
that he had his giant ask for any role. So
Ponytail Guy and the dude from Living in Oblivion. Those are the only two things I think of with James LaGrosse.
Oh, there's another. He's in Point Break. He's one of Bodhi's gang.
Oh, that's right. That's right. But he's not Anthony Kiedis, so who cares?
Yeah. He is forever Mike from Phantasm to me when I see him, which is funny because he's not original
Mike.
He's
not Mike from Phantasm.
Part 3
yeah.
Mike.
And a fan, any fan that is bigger than you.
Yes, will be like, what?
Mike come down swinging.
How dare you? No, I love... This was the first Phantasm movie I saw as well. And so I actually agree with Jim that James LaGrosse as Mike seems perfectly natural to me because I had never seen the 1979 Phantasm when I saw this.
Exactly.
But I know there's like deep feelings, big hurting, Waffle House is divided. This is a dangerous topic to get into.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's fine. He just looks like he's doing the Zoolander Blue Steel look through most of it, and it kind of drives me crazy because he's too much of a leading man for Mike, I guess.
Universal wanted Coscarelli to drop both Bannister and the guy playing Mike, and they finally came to agreement that he would only have to drop one of them. And I love it. Yeah. Reggie gets to stay.
Picture Reggie. Well, Reggie's the heart and soul.
Yeah.
But Universal was lobbying for, of all people, evidently, Jeffrey Tambor to play Reggie.
It's so strange to me. That is like, I can't imagine Jeffrey Tambor doing anything action related.
And of course, the big piece of trivia is Brad Pitt auditioned for the role of Mike as well.
Yeah. Early Brad Pitt. Yeah.
Early Brad Pitt.
He then got Cool World instead.
Yeah. And the rest is history. From Cool World to the stars.
In between as well, Michael Baldwin had just kind of stopped acting. Reggie Bannister had stopped acting, like Michael said. And he actually had gone to work at a mortuary afterwards, doing all kinds of different things. And then was pulled back out to play Reggie again when Don Coscarelli finally got the idea for this sequel. He said that he struggled to come up with an idea for the sequel for a long time. And he's like, why don't I just start it like the moment after the last one ends? And it kind of does.
I could have told him that. It's like,
Why didn't he call me?
he has this eureka moment in the middle of the night. It's like the most obvious choice about how you
Totally.
do the next movie. But, had he not seen Halloween 2?
I got a brilliant idea for a sequel. Why don't we bring back the same characters? Boom, I'm a genius. I'll write it.
The second film picks up right where the first one leaves off, with Reggie Bannister deciding that he's going to take care of little kid Mike forever and be his legal guardian. And they're just going to hit the road. And when Mike goes upstairs to pack a bag to hit the road immediately, Reggie then goes up to find out what happened to him and sees like one of the little Jawas like pulling Mike out of the mirror.
Pulling Lori Loughlin through the hallway.
Yeah, no, see, I've heard mixed things about that. Is that because I've heard like it's a stunt woman, and then I've heard that it's Lori Loughlin, and I think
it is Lori Loughlin.
My sources say it's Lori Loughlin.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you hear a lot these days about sort of chosen families, but it's weird to think about Reggie Bannister being a chosen uncle. Like, you went, Reggie's the guy I want to hang out with. And I can kind of see it, but
I would hang out with Reggie.
Yeah,
Reggie's
but would you want him to take care of you?
You know how in movies the term everyman gets thrown around a lot? Like, oh, he's an everyman type character. You know, people relate to him because he seems not like an actor, so down to earth. We need a new word that's like an extreme of that, because that's what Reggie is. Reggie's like, he's such an everyman, you kind of don't even want to know him.
There's too many people like him that you kind of want to avoid, maybe. Yeah.
And I say that with love, but I still say it.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, if he was at a bar and you saw him, you wouldn't think, oh, I want to hang out with him. You'd probably think like, keep your eye on that one.
You make eye contact with him and he comes, you're like, fuck, because he starts coming over your way. You're like, I'm gonna have to hear some stories now. But he's kind of like the adult contemporary version of Ash from Evil Dead. Mm-hmm. Like he doesn't have those edges. He's just the light rock version.
Oh, that's a good way of putting it. He is light rock. Mm-hmm.
I mean, but this whole movie, without giving it all away, this whole movie is an illustration of the eternal battle between good Skullet and bad Skullet, with Reggie on the good side and the tall man on the bad side. Mm-hmm. And then two regular mullet guys are trapped in the middle, but they go bad.
Yeah, we immediately get an action Reg in this movie. He goes full action right out of the gate, like fighting the Jawas, the dwarves. I actually, it's gonna be hard for me not to just call them Jawas or dwarves,
Lurkers.
But I guess in Lurkers, yes, the lore is that they're Lurkers, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's the official title.
Yeah,
that never gets mentioned in that book. It's always just dwarves in the book. That's interesting.
You've got Lurkers and Gravers. These are the tall man's crew.
Okay, what's the difference between a Lurker and a Graver?
The Lurkers look like Jawas because they've been compressed. Gravers are just dudes that work for him wearing gas masks. Like you'll notice there's the one that the chainsaw fight guy. That's a Graver.
There's two mortuary guys. Are they Gravers then?
Those two mortuary guys are two gentlemen who are employed at a mortuary.
Okay. Because the same thing with the guy in the first one, the character in the first one, it's like, are people in mortuaries naturally, do they have a predilection to be controlled by the tall man? Do they have a special deficiency that makes them easily controlled by the tall man?
I find all of this totally easy to believe, so I'm going to say yes.
Okay. All right, sure. Just because they don't bleed yellow. That was the only thing that made me ask.
Right. Sure.
Because they seem like easy marks for the tall man.
Yeah, immediately in this sequence, though, you can see the raised budget because you do see the Lurkers' faces, which I don't think you ever even saw in the first Phantasm. Nope. They were just completely hooded, but now you get the full face and their combination of either prosthetics or just like full puppets, which is fun.
Yeah, several of them, including like the one that crawls out towards the end, was played by a guy named Ed Gale. I almost said Ed Gein, but that's a different guy in a different prosthetic suit. But yeah, he was Howard the Duck, but he played a lot of the characters in this as well.
Before Reggie's early action scene, the movie introduces our female protagonist.
That's true.
And
oh boy,
as far as I'm concerned, I'm pretty sure she's the male protagonist puppet from The Dark Crystal because she looks exactly like him. She's one of I always complain about characters lacking agency, and this is something even worse. I mean, she has nothing to do in this movie other than jog through a mortuary. But the opening scene tells us that basically she has fantasies of a guy named Mike.
Don't we all?
I can relate to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she like knows that she loves him and that he's basically her savior, and that if her grandfather dies, the tall man is going to reincarnate him. That's all dumped on us like right out of the gate. It's just like, whoa, okay.
The studio wanted a female protagonist. That was a big thing for them. And Tom Coscarelli went, well, we'll have a female in there. How about that? All she does is just be like, man, Mike is so cool. That's it.
Well, she also specifically says something about a grave robber from another dimension. So she really puts a fine point on what the tall man is, which wasn't really explored or specified in the first one.
But it's also strange because you get a little bit later that apparently Mike sees her too, or like knows about her. But there's never an implication that like they've met or talked.
I think that given that Universal was saying to Coscarelli, hey, you can't have any dream sequences, these two characters are constantly talking about their dreams in this movie. It makes me think that his original script probably had a whole bunch of dream sequences. And in fact, apparently there was a love scene dream sequence between these two. So I think that part of the reason it's so confusing is because Universal was like, nope, drop all that.
There was a love scene that was a little bit like, if you've ever seen the movie First Reformed, there's a love scene of sorts in that Paul Schrader apparently went, hey man, Phantasm 2 was onto something.
That's the first thing I think of when I think of First Reformed is the love scene.
Is the love scene, yeah. Like anyone else. Well, I like that you see the Lurkers more and they're doing stuff. Reggie, when he's attacked by them, he puts out all the pilot lights on the stove, cranks up the gas knowing it's going to start a fire, and then goes further into the house. Okay, that was certainly a choice. And then he hides like 3 feet away from the tall man, and the tall man doesn't see him.
No peripheral vision.
You are demanding a lot right out of the gate, but okay, I will see where this goes.
But it works because there's a lot of Raimi style photography going on in this scene.
Yes.
When he mauls with the butt of the shotgun one of the Lurkers, it does it in this like real rapid fire way where it looks like, I don't know how they achieve the effect, but you instantly think of Ash in Evil Dead 2 kind of action sequence there. The one popping out of the kitchen cabinet is done in this like extreme close up out of nowhere. It's very Raimi, but I think very effective. And again, this is the scene that sold me on the movie when I was 15. I still love it. I still think it's fantastic, even if you can't handle the inconsistencies of the storytelling.
What got me back into it, I will say, is when the house finally blows up. Reggie gets Mike out of there, house blows up, and just that shot of the tall man in front of it's not, Johnny cool guy action walk away. He just stands there, kind of looks over his shoulder like, yeah, well. And it's just, man, I love the tall man. I like what they do with him in this movie a lot. Because they've definitely expanded his thing without explaining it. They made him bigger and more, but just still went like, this could be anything, man. I don't know.
Yeah, the body language there is brilliant. His like, oh, did the house behind me just blow up? Huh. Yeah. Well, anyway, on with my business.
So evidently, when the crew were wiring the house for the explosion stunt, they had a fire marshal on set who just kept saying like, no, tamp it down a little bit, can't go too crazy and all that. And he finally just, I don't know why you would ask so late in the production or your day, but he just said, so what movie are we doing? And somebody said, oh, it's a sequel to that movie Phantasm, if you ever saw that. And the marshal was evidently a gigantic fan of the first one, and he just said, just blow the shit out of this house. Just pile it all in there. Go nuts. So,
he got to contribute.
Pays to have fans on your crew.
Well, there was also a thing where the house was super cheap along with houses around it because they were going to like build a freeway through there or a train line. I forget which. But they were super cheap, but you had to get it off the property. You could buy the house, but you were responsible for moving it. And Tom Coscarelli went, yeah, we'll move it. We will move that house.
Blow it up. Then we find out Mike has been in an institution for a while. And he's just kind of like, I think he's got a little bit of voiceover saying like, let's just tell him what I need to do to get out of here.
Can distinguish fantasy from reality. That's good. Keep it up. And I don't blame Reg anymore. I mean, what could he do? I mean, the dreams have really just taken hold of me. Just tell him what he wants to hear.
And in my head, all I can hear is, remember the tooth. The tooth.
I'm glad you mentioned that because my read on that scene too is this is like Dune narration. This is like getting in people's heads like Paul Atreides style.
Yeah, I was very worried that was going to be a regular thing, but I'm glad it kind of stops there.
Yeah, because the rest of the narration later on is more from Reggie's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the first thing you have to respect about Mike in Phantasm 2. He does his spiel to get out of the Institute. It works. He gets out. He immediately goes and starts digging up graves.
Yes.
And whatever you think of him, whatever you think of this movie, you got to respect that, right? From the Psychiatric Institute immediately to digging up graves in a graveyard. I applaud.
Yeah.
Commitment to the bit. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And that Reggie knows that too, because that's where he finds him.
He finds him. Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, I hear Mike's been sprung. Oh, where should I find him? Oh, the graveyard.
He's going to be in the graveyard.
Yeah, all the graves are empty. The corpses are missing. And that's where Mike tells Reggie that other people are starting to see the tall man now. I do love this, though, where Reggie says, like, hey, I'm going to take you to meet my family.
They're driving in the car after the cemetery. And Reg says,
Aunt Martha came down and Celeste baked a turkey. And little Bonnie, she just can't wait to meet her Uncle Mike. She's been talking about it all day.
Who knew that Reggie was such a family man?
it's so ridiculous. Like, the only reason that absurd pile of dialogue exists is because they're all going to die within seconds of it being delivered.
A lot of things will get criticized for, I guess the term now is fridging the girlfriend.
Yes.
Which comes from a Green Lantern comic where I forget the character's name, but his girlfriend exists basically just get murdered, and he opens a fridge and finds her dead body in there. Is this better because we never even meet them? Does he say that that's his family, or does he just like say names? Because I only just caught names.
I was very curious about that. Later in the film, either Mike or Reggie makes a comment about Reg's entire family being killed.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
that's it.
It is Reg's family. But yeah, at the time, I was like, Aunt Martha? Who's Aunt Martha? Celeste? Who the fuck is Celeste? Why is she baking turkeys for Reg? Little Bonnie?
Well, they're almost like they could all be like Myrtle in the first one. Just this character that shows up for one line of dialogue and is like, wait, who is this? And then you never hear from them again. And we never even hear from them to start with.
I just love that Reg has this like cadre of little biddies living in his house that bake turkeys and talk about, can't wait to meet Mike.
Yeah. Reg needs a lot of care, I would imagine.
Agreed.
It takes a team.
Yeah. When the house blows up, that's all Reg needs to completely commit to tracking down the tall man, with Mike saying it might take us years to find the tall man. And so they hit the road. They stop at a hardware store and load up on guns and tools. And I adore these kind of scenes, stocking up. They're not doing fortification, which is my favorite, but they are building weapons and getting their supplies for the whole thing.
It reminded me a bit of Dawn of the Dead when they're doing the shopping in the mall. But apparently, Roger Avery talked to Don Coscarelli and claimed that scene was an inspiration for Bruce Willis in Pulp Fiction, like doing his little, like going through and like, oh, not this in the sponsor. But Don Coscarelli was like, I also don't know if he was pulling my leg, so whatever.
Yeah,
I don't want to throw you guys way off your timeline, but there's something that has to be addressed here before we get too far away from it, which is that I've always just been deeply confused by this idea that the opening of this movie involves Reggie, and I mean it's Reg fighting a bunch of Jawas, blowing up his own house. Meanwhile, Lori Loughlin is upstairs pretending to be Mike, being dragged around by the tall man. Okay, we watched all that happen, but then at the cemetery scene after this, when Mike is out and he's older, Reg tells Mike that event was Mike's delusion.
Yeah.
So apparently we're supposed to believe in that moment that Reg has no memory of the scene that we just watched. Like, he's like, oh no, even though it's all about me and I'm the star of it, I'm the only person you really see in the whole thing. It's not actually my memory. It's your delusion entirely about me kicking ass in my own home.
Right.
And I just don't get it. I just don't really get it.
How bad do things have to be going for you where you're like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fantasize that Reg is awesome. But just gonna, not that I save the day, that Reggie saves the day.
The script is off here in my reading of it because it must be true that it's Mike's delusion and that it didn't happen, even though we're led to believe that everything Mike believes is true. Because if it was true, Reg would certainly have remembered doing all of that.
Yeah. I mean, in the first one, did any of that happen? Well, yes, because the tall man exists and is in real life.
Sure.
But did it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to try to chart out the timeline of this, it's not going to make any sense.
Can we try anyway, though? I mean, I think it'd be worth it.
Yeah.
We need more tools and more men and more supplies to do that, I think.
Crack this.
Yes.
I need to know who was having delusions about who and when and why.
Like, yeah, I didn't even think about it because this movie, the first one is so much like, no, it isn't. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. That I was just like, okay, we're just going to continue doing this.
It is one of the hallmarks of Phantasm, though. No, it's not bad because it runs through every movie in this franchise.
Okay, so it's going to keep going. All right.
Yeah, just you wait. Reggie keeps a journal as they drive through the small towns because he's a sensitive guy like that. And I do love this sequence, just the idea of going through small towns that have been ransacked by the tall man. Like, I think they do a really good job of like creating the atmosphere of a rundown town. Not only is the town rundown, but the graves are all open and empty. And I feel like they did a great job of establishing that eerie atmosphere.
This is actually my favorite thing about this movie is this concept of this like small scale running apocalypse through rural Pacific Northwest. That the tall man is wreaking that because they keep driving through these towns that truly look like, they're out of The Last of Us or Fallout or something. But yet they're just in rural Oregon. And they make it very clear that this isn't like some global scale apocalypse or North America apocalypse. This is just rural Oregon getting sucked dry, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's just the tall man, wherever he goes, there's this like trail of havoc. And it's always, for whatever reason, these little towns. So like, meanwhile, over in Portland, no one has any idea this is going on, doesn't make any headlines. And yet when you're there at the heart of it, it looks like full on post-apocalyptic hellscape.
Yeah.
I love it.
Which is interesting because this movie doesn't explain the tall man's plan any more than the first one does. And frankly, I'm glad about that. I couldn't help but think what he should do is just sell this reanimating the dead technology and then go back home, hit up an exchange office and convert American dollars into whatever he spends. So I'm sure the exchange rate's great. And then boom, he's a bajillionaire. It's simple economics.
But what if he doesn't want money and he just wants little tiny guys? Yeah.
Well, I also like, because we talked about this in the first one, that basically all that slave stuff is just established because Mike goes through the portal, sees it, and then goes, oh yeah, they're slaves. Like, there's no indication of what's ever happening. But so it's nice. But this makes a little bit more sense. I guess I should back up and say this does make a little bit more sense because since they are operating more in this world, in this one, that you can see them being slaves, the minions or whatever. Oh my God. You think they're dressed like minions under those little cloaks? Like they're wearing
they're all little yellow minions?
They're all little yellow. I mean, they have a yellow blood. Maybe the minions are the next step of the tall man's plan.
Yeah. Just wait for the Phantasm minion memes that your aunt will post on your Facebook page.
Yes. Very excited for my aunt that is into both the minions and Phantasm. She seems rad. Do you think about the way movies are now? We're like, we have to explain everything.
Yeah.
And they still are like, well, we're acquired by a studio. Yeah, don't worry about it. We're still not going to tell you shit.
Coscarelli still understood, just like Carpenter and with Halloween, that like the villain is scarier if you don't really know what they're after.
Yeah.
You know what they're capable of. You know that they're terrifying, but you don't really fully grasp their master plan. And it's scarier because of it. In
one of these small towns, Reggie and Mike just start investigating different buildings. And of course, they walk into a morgue, because why wouldn't you in a Phantasm film? They see a woman cowering in the corner, and we get our first like fantastic makeup effect of this movie.
Well, it's Quado.
It's back Quado. It's a Quado. It was very Quado. It's very. I thought it was kind of Freddy Krueger as well, from like Part 5 or something like that.
And a bit of the Thing style effect going on there.
Yep.
It's
definitely
fantastic.
Some of that.
It's a beautiful effect. It's pulled off really well.
Yeah. This just gnarly version of the tall man comes out of this woman's back and just looks right at us and talks.
And because the woman is Liz from the opening scene, the girl who's looking for Mike, you genuinely don't expect that to happen because you think this is going to be the introduction of the Liz character, right? That's exactly all audience members are going to think that. Here's Liz. Oh, they found her. And instead, she's just some apparition of Liz with a very nasty baby tall man creature thing.
Yeah. Which is interesting because this was initially supposed to be a dream, but because Universal was like, no, like we need clear delineations between dreams. So that means there is actually like, this is a monster that the tall man created. And that's frankly cooler.
Yeah.
And as Mike and Reggie say, the tall man has been leaving traps for us. And I like that their trap is just basically a practical joke. It's like a Jack in the Box.
Yeah.
It doesn't attack them. It doesn't do anything other than just kind of laugh in their faces like, ha ha.
You play a good game, boy. He even manages to that riff.
There was a crew member quoted in the book that I remember one day going up and to Angus Scrimm and asking, "So Angus, what's the deal with the tall man? Why doesn't he just kill him and get it over with?" And staying perfectly in character, he answered, "My boy, the tall man is bored. He's bored. He's been doing the same job for so long. And here comes a boy who will play a fun game. And that's all it is to him, a game. He's having fun. He thinks they're playing with him. He doesn't think he's killing people. He doesn't get it. There's no life and death to him, really." I don't know if he made that up on the spot or had already thought about it, but it sounded good to me. And I agree. I like that. Because, yeah, the tall man is just like, whatever, I'm going to win. This is fine. It's like, I will absolutely play with you. And I think that's really cool.
I like that. And it helps explain a scene later in the movie that I wondered about, but actually that helps explain it.
But I will say that the spine monster is so impressive, it stopped me thinking about Reggie's cool hat that said Boogie Down on it. Because as soon as that showed up, I'm like, man, I just want that hat. And then, oh my God, spine monster.
I did forget about that. Yeah,
it's such a great hat. And it's here, too, in the same mortuary where Mike sees the dead body of a character we'll eventually run into later.
Yes. The other very possessed of her own self female lead of the film.
Just fully developed.
Full agency.
At least she has a personality, though. Like,
yes, that's true.
No agency, but there is a personality. Liz has no personality at all.
Yeah.
None.
She just has jeans and white sneakers, basically. But Alchemy... Because yes, Alchemy is the name of the other female.
Yeah, after this bit, they're driving down the road, and Mike has this like vision of a young woman hitchhiking at the side of the road, and also, but then sees her on the slab, and then wakes up, and Reggie's like,
Mike, this is Alchemy.
Kimmy for short. It's nice to meet you, Mike.
And Mike just has no reaction, which I love. He's like, well, okay, here's a stranger in your car who you've just dreamt is dead, but it now seems to be alive. And this is a human being named Alchemy, and you're just like, I have no reaction to that at all.
Yeah. Especially because you're on like a singular-minded mission, and nothing should interfere with that.
Look, if you're picking up hitchhikers in Eastern Oregon in 1988, every third one is a hippie girl named Alchemy.
That's true.
That's true, right? Yes.
For every 2 saffrons, you get an Alchemy. Yeah. But I like also that they have a pee break to confer about it. Mike just calls out Reggie for being so horny.
Well, they also are standing right next to each other. They're like peeing on each other's feet, practically.
It's called friendship, Jim.
Classic film cropping there. But what I love is that you get audio of Reggie's urination running through the entire conversation. Hitting leaves, hitting ferns, hitting rocks. You get to hear the whole spray.
The whole stream. Stream.
This has the first, unfortunately, infamous line from Reg in this movie.
Shit, Mike. Have you looked at her? You know, we've been out here a long time. Besides, it gets hard on the road.
Reg, you're thinking with your wrong head.
This is where they remind us that the Reg character is really horn dog Reg. Always has been, always will be. Don't be fooled by his boogie down shirt. Or wait, boogie down hat. Yeah, he's horny.
Reggie horny, Michael.
Just before that, we cross-cut to boring old Liz and her grandma, and I guess they're going to the funeral for her grandpa because grandpa's finally kicked the bucket. The tall man does reveal himself to her in a very similar "the funeral is about to begin" type of way as the first film.
Just with that tender touch that the tall man has.
We go through a little bit of like, you know, the priest is at home. He's trying to drink some bourbon. He's scared of something. I guess he's aware of the tall man.
Yeah, because he's already desecrated the corpse.
Yes.
And I really like this character played by this character actor, Kenneth Tiger, who I have seen in a billion things and has been in a billion things. But I do like that thing of this guy. There's like one guy in a small town that knows what's going on, but is powerless to do anything about it in a way that like this completely violates his faith. It's very much in Don Coscarelli has talked about being influenced by Salem's Lot, particularly the bit at the end where they hit the road to go fight vampires. And that gave me the inspiration to make this a road movie. But that aspect too of having this priest that knows something's going down, but like It challenges everything he believes in. He has to do some things he's not comfortable doing, like stabbing a corpse.
He's definitely one of the highlights of the movie. And back when I was sampling it as a teenager, he stole the show. I was left and right sampling lines from this guy.
Yeah, he's got a great voice.
But just even the line, because he ends up getting haunted, I guess, by this corpse of Liz's grandpa. And just that thing where it keeps hearing a noise at the door, and it's like, damn this wind. It's so corny that like the movie is like, yeah, we know. We just got to get through this scene.
Yeah.
He's got quite a bit of bourbon in him by that point, too. So I always give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, yeah, well, when you got that much Jack Daniels in you, maybe you do think the wind is knocking at your door.
Then we get Liz eventually finds that her grandfather's grave is empty and hears the tall man say, I've got them both, which I kind of enjoy, too, because that implies that, where's grandma at that point? He's taken her as well.
Yeah, the tall man's a lot more talkative in this one.
I don't like the disruption of the continuity here, though, because there's this idea that's played out up to this point that the tall man really just operates on corpses. And they make all of this hullabaloo about the grandfather dying. And, oh, no, now that he's finally died, he's going to be reanimated by the tall man. And then it's just like, and I'm going to grab your living grandmother, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
And she turns into a lurker. So it's really the same end result. In fact, we never see the grandfather as a lurker. We see the grandmother as a lurker.
Correct.
And she didn't die first. So in fact, I guess she should have been more worried about her grandma the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Turning them into a undead zombie, an uncontrollable thing, is a separate process from shrinking them down. I guess is what we learned from that, because that's done later. I think so. I guess because when the grandpa comes to attack the priest or just bother, he's still regular size unless he's got a step stool outside the house, because you only see him through the porthole. He might be.
No, he's regular size. His wife wakes up in bed next to him, and he's definitely still full size.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Which I like the makeup of the scars around his mouth where they sewed his mouth shut. I thought that was kind of a neat little touch. But so because they make such a big deal out of the embalming process that puts the yellow goo in them. But I want to know how they shrink them down. I'm fascinated by that. They do not touch on that in this movie.
Some wild interstellar compression going on. Then people want to know. Fans want to know.
Yeah, an intergalactic trash compactor of some sort.
Alchemy suggested. I think it's her family or something has a bed and breakfast where they can all stay, and they get there and it's pretty dilapidated. And Reggie and Mike
in Paragord, Oregon.
Paragord, yes. Reggie and Mike go about setting up booby traps. They could have made more. I thought they could have fortified the house. I would have been a little bit more excited, but they only did like 2 or 3 grenades.
Well, just wait for Phantasm 3 because that's
half the movie is just fortification.
That's
Phantasm
true.
3 is basically Home Alone in the Phantasm universe, but we'll get to that later.
I'm excited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not saying you should be excited. I'm just pointing out some facts.
Yeah. We see Liz spying on one of the funeral attendants who's starting to embalm a body, while another in a gas mask. These would be the gravers, wheels a freshly dug up casket past her. At this point, too, like Reggie and Mike see one exhuming a body, and I think Mike actually calls him a graver.
Yes.
At that point.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Off screen, Mike does a stealth attack to take out the graver. And it always bugs me we don't get to see that, because I just don't think of Mike as being like an action hero of any sort.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't, there's just nothing intimidating about him, nothing physical about him. He's ponytail guy.
Yeah. No, that was definitely a scene they cut, because that would explain why he's wearing the gas mask later.
Just in case people are wondering, ponytail guy is Singles, the Cameron Crowe movie. James LaGrosse has a brief but wonderful few scenes in it. And he says to, who's the lead female in Singles?
I think for is it Kira Sedgwick?
Yeah.
Is that storyline?
Kira Sedgwick, yeah. And he says, it's okay to loathe these people. There's so much life in you and so much emotional larceny in these others. And I mean, if you don't love James LaGrosse well, you should, but then just watch Living in Oblivion and it'll completely seal the deal.
They all come together.
But in Phantasm 2, he's fine, but he doesn't have a whole lot going for him. I don't believe he could take out that graver on his own.
Well, I like when she's walking through the graveyard, how there's front and center, there's a tombstone for Alex Murphy. from
Yes.
RoboCop.
Yeah, did
Beloved
see that.
father.
One of two
I got a huge kick out of that.
on-the-nose references. You get the Sam Raimi in the mortuary.
Yep.
Ashes.
Well, Sam Raimi wanted to be in the movie, but they just couldn't, scheduling wise, they just couldn't make it work. Which I like. That just makes me love Sam Raimi and even more because he's like, I just want to be in the movie and get murdered.
Yeah.
And like that's how he shows up in Miller's Crossing, and I just like that that being a string of things that Sam Raimi's in.
Hanging with your friends. At this point, we get back to one of the more famous set pieces from the film where our priest is back at the funeral home and he opens a box and kind of stings himself in front of the wonderful like stained glass window. Like, I really like the look of this whole set. The red is really, really well done. The stained glass looks great.
It's a nice upgrade from the previous one. I like the way that the mortuary in the first one looks. It's very kind of strange and uncanny. But this one, having a budget that can make it look more like a mortuary, but it's still very, very neat looking. It's very ominous in its own way.
Yeah. And the tall man comes up behind him and he begins to psychically levitate his rosary to hang him, which is what a great way to take out a priest. Yeah, I said it.
Well, I also like all the priest's aggressive cross signing. He's just walking down because he knows how evil this place is. And he's just like waving his like, yes, I'm going to bless this whole fucking place if it takes me all night. He's very determined.
The tall man's abilities too. This is like he had a little like they implied a little bit of psychic abilities in the first film, but it's unquestionable right here, obviously, that he's doing this. So that is another power of the tall man at this point.
Well, and this one won me over. Last episode, I revealed that I did not really care for the ball. I committed blasphemy, being like, I just don't get the ball. This one does explain it. I didn't hate it, but I'm just like, it seems like a mess. What is this even about? But the fact that the whole thing like involves sanguinating or exsanguinating the person, okay, it makes a little bit more sense that these balls are sort of more sentries and security guards, but they're also like, yeah, we'll make a mess, but hey, guess what? We took care of the blood part of it. And just the variety of them and the way they appear, the way they're introduced in this one out of a baby's coffin.
Yes.
Oh man. And just the ka-chunk of the slow reveal is great. And I guess when they tried to get a baby's coffin, an actual baby's coffin for the movie. And when they talked to some like coffin salesman, I don't know if they have a particular name about it, he was furious and chased them out of the store.
What?
Which is weird because you think if you're in the biz, you're like, Phantasm, great. Finally, our stories can be told. But it turns out, they just like made one out of cardboard. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they slide out of this tall man, like just like raises an eyebrow and they slide out of the side of this thing on this like mechanical slider. And they're different ones too, which I like. It's not just the same, just with the two prongs. Although they did use those two prongs to the original ones to make casts for the other ones. But the one that attacks the priest has that little like pizza cutter on the end. Mm-hmm. It's very cool.
It takes off his ear.
And that's such a great shot.
Yeah. 53 minutes in. Again, like these are like the most iconic visual of the film, and they actually wait nearly an hour to show it to you as well. So a little restraint on Coscarelli's part.
Well, particularly coming off of the Friday the 13th series.
Yeah,
which just was like, has it been 5 seconds? Someone must die.
Yeah. The ball comes screaming around the corner for the priest, takes off his ear, and then ends up drilling out his brain. Tall man tosses Liz against the wall, and a Jawa comes after her, and that's when we find out that this was her grandmother through the
it's calling out
facial prosthetic. Yeah.
Which is amazing because when the thing attacks the priest, the ratings board was pissed. Like this was the thing that they were the most down on. And Coscarelli was like, I timed the scene to match the drilling of the caretaker in the original Phantasm. You didn't have a problem with it then. And they responded by saying, the rating standards have become more stringent since then. And this is something that we've revisited talking about Friday the 13th, how that's sort of ebbed and flowed. Yeah. And they definitely caught it in high tide of censorship.
Right.
But he was able to like make concessions other places because I feel like you can definitely tell where, particularly after having just seen the first one, where he kind of loses, where he makes cuts. Because it's like, well, all the blood spurting out. Okay, now it's down on the ground. Don't worry about it. It's over now.
Yeah.
No pee this time.
Yes, no pee from the guy.
Which I was rooting for, but got no pee.
Yeah. She runs out of the building and falls into a grave, and for some reason Mike's down there. I love that reveal. Like Mike's just hanging out in an empty grave, probably digging it up.
Well, that's where he took out the graver.
Oh, there you go. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, I think he even had I think he has the graver's mask, the gas mask on from the graver that he took out.
That makes more sense. Okay,
but have we glossed over the sequence in which Reggie's getting dry humped by Alchemy and her dead uncle's abandoned bed of
we're
breakfast?
just about there.
Yeah, because Liz gets home first, or they bring Liz in. But
so they cut back, and this is where Mike starts.
This is why we had you on to talk about this.
No, Mike starts a fire in the fireplace with the flamethrower, like cool guys do.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've built it. Let me see it in action. Which we skipped over that in the gearing up scene where they're shopping. Reggie makes one of the coolest weapons I've ever seen.
Yeah.
The quad barrel shotgun. And it's not just that he just put the two shotguns together, but it's how the barrels are cut.
They're cut
to like reach a point. It's ridiculous. I love it. It's kind of a letdown when it actually gets used though. Because the whole time I'm kind of waiting for it, and then like, yeah, it's cool, but I feel like it could have been more. I don't know.
It was 4 lurkers at once.
It's still cool, but it's just like I wanted to see more. I want to see him take them out, maybe 8. But there's a lot of guns in this movie, but not a lot of gunplay. Like people are brandishing guns all the time, but there's not a lot of gunfire.
Yeah. At this point, the guys both declare that they will watch over the ladies while they sleep, which is...
Before that, there's this really awkward scene of the fireplace being lit, as you just mentioned, lit with the flamethrower, where they've both coupled off. And it's like, okay, Mike is now reunited for the first time, since it was only in Dreamland. With Liz, the girl from the Dark Crystal. And like they just instantly love each other. No questions asked. Just 100%. Oh yeah, it's like they've been dating for 50 years. And then you've got Reg and Alchemy, which is, no one's idea of a natural match. Like seriously, no one's idea of a natural match, right? He's probably 30 years older than her. Former ice cream salesman with a little ponytail on his balding head. And
well, the actress Sam Phillips, who went on to like achieve fame as basically a relationship advice radio person, and like one of those like I'm frank about sex people. But this was like a very early role for her, and she asked Don Coscarelli like, why would I be after Reggie? Why would my character not be like, Mike is a hunk? Why would I not be after him? And Coscarelli's like, I don't know, you got a bald fetish. And so they really leaned into that.
oh my God.
But I also love that because like there's an innocence to that. Like there's not like you have daddy issues. And there's the whole thing. It's like, no, you're just into bald heads. That's it. And they play it up.
I can't call it a sex scene because there's no sex going on. But in the scene,
the bald scene,
she really doubles down on playing into that and the whole Reg, I love your head. And she's like straddling him and stroking his bald head. It's a good performance. Like you're convinced that this individual named Alchemy really does feel that way, and that's all that matters, right? That's all I need to.
And apparently they did have to like do multiple takes. Well, first of all, this is like one of the earliest scenes they did because they did this, and I think one of like the car chase scenes or something, just so very on, like maybe even the first day. So they had cool dailies to show the execs. And then as soon as the execs saw those, they'd be like, we're good. We're not going to bother you for the rest of the movie. You guys have cool stuff here. Yeah. Alchemy and Reggie like barely got to spend any time together. Reggie's current wife is there. This is a very early acting job for the woman that plays Alchemy. And so it's just like, this is really awkward. I don't know what to do here. So yeah, she just fell in love with his head, and I guess he like slapped the shit out of it too.
Yeah, he came out of it a little bit dazed. Evidently, he was not like the fun sex scene that he thought he might get to do. He was just completely beaten up.
Well, she goes crazy. She's doing like cowboy lasso moves and hee-hawing, and he's just like, oh my God.
It seems so apt for Reggie though. Like it's like it couldn't have gone any other way. You wouldn't have seen a love scene with Reggie and be like, yes, this is normal, and I enjoy seeing this. It's got to be something silly.
The spin-off series here would be Reg the horn dog, driving his ice cream truck around rural Oregon, picking up women every time, thinking it's going to be this great score, and then it's some like
really strange
something like this.
Yeah. Basically, just a live-action Leisure Suit Larry.
Yes. Just gets in over his head.
Yeah, over his bald head. They're interrupted by something having triggered the trap, and they go downstairs, and they come to the conclusion that it must have just blown away a cat.
Yeah.
It's terrible. Terrible.
And Mike starts having his first real doubts about this. And this scene really confuses me because Mike is looking at the corpse of the black cat that got blown up by their own grenade that they set.
Mm-hmm.
And his reaction to blowing up a cat in their house is like, we can't beat the tall man. Who the hell do we think we are?
I would feel terrible if
Which actually, now that I say that out loud, I'm like, that does kind of make
Yeah.
sense, I guess. He's like, I just blew up a cat.
I would feel so bad.
How am I going to take down the tall man?
Speaking of weird reactions, the fact the explosion goes off and Alchemy's like, don't worry about it. She's like,
Right.
no, it's fine. No, laugh and have a good time. We just blew something up. Which I think there was initially supposed to be in that scene too, a shot of Alchemy taking off part of her scalp as like, well, what's going on here? But I think they wisely cut that for the reveal at the end.
To wait for the end. Yeah. So Liz gets grabbed through the window by the tall man at this point. And so Mike and Reg just load up the car and pursue. Hot pursuit of the hearse that the tall man is driving with Liz inside.
So this is what's so great about Angus Scrimm is that everyone talks about what a super nice man he is, like outside of being the tall man. Because the actress that played Liz talked about when he throws her into the back of the hearse, he kept like between. He's like, "Are you okay? Was that okay? Should I be doing something different? Like, I just don't want to hurt you."
Yeah.
And then people had compared him to like Boris Karloff, who was apparently famously very nice. And Angus Scrimm was like, absolutely not. Nope. Do not compare me to him. He is way better than me. I don't want to hear about it. Like,
he was way better. Oh,
yeah. But just Angus Scrimm just seems like just a stand-up dude.
While they're chasing the tall man, they flip the famous Hemi pretty much right away. They don't last very long. They flip the car. It blows up. And the tall man gets away with Liz. Cutting to the funeral attendant is about to feed Liz to a cremation oven. Finally, Mike and Reg make it there, and they start investigating all the different embalming machinery and stuff like that. They see an attendant pouring the ashes labeled Mr. Sam Raimi into a bag.
Yeah. There's a lot of slowly going through a mortuary in this movie.
Yeah, I was just about to say, this is a lot of like stalking around.
I think about all the awesome scenes that happen in this movie. I forget that in between each one, there's a lot of just faffing about. There's a lot of just like walking around and like, oh my God, look at this mortuary.
This is a high volume of faffing about in a mortuary movie. And most of it is Liz in her jeans and white sneakers, just kind of pacing around, sometimes jogging, sometimes running. And the continuity there too is weird because like the tall man captures her in the mortuary, throws her against a wall, and then just walks away, only to reappear later at the bed and breakfast and capture her again. That's the part I referred to earlier when I'm like, oh, it's just a game to him. This is why he's just taking his time. He just doesn't
Here's
care.
a working theory I have. And I'm sure it's going to get disproven. If not in the next movie, pretty soon after. The tall man is a cat. Because I have seen my cat, I have an indoor-outdoor cat. I've seen it catch rats, bring them in, bat it around for a little bit, and then get distracted by something. And then the rat escapes, and I have to do something about it. But so I think the tall man's like that. He's like, oh, this is fun. I'll just throw you against the wall. Hey, look at that. A light turned on. I'm going to go check that out. Maybe someone has food for me.
Oh, a house blew up behind me.
What's going on there? Yeah.
That's annoying. But yeah, it is. I forgot about that. That, yeah, he throws her against the wall in a, like, not since Boba Fett have I seen just such an unbelievable flight of like, she just glides against the wall and then falls down. And yeah, I forgot. Then he's just like, well, that was good enough.
Yeah.
Go do something else now.
I'm done.
Reggie does get the bright idea to pour hydrochloric acid into the yellow embalming fluid because that's lying around. Mike finds what looks like a wall plug.
It's generous calling that a bright idea because I get that if you've read the script and you know the climax of the movie, it's a bright idea. But at the time he's doing it, what's the motivation?
If you see hydrochloric acid in an 80s movie, you know to pour that into something, anything, because it'll be useful down the road.
I think he thinks he's going to sabotage the yellow fluid going into the to become lurkers. He's like, oh, I'll screw up this process.
I will save one guy from becoming a dwarf by viciously mutilating his body. But that does seem like a very Reggie plan. Like we commented in the last episode about how his big plan for stopping the madness that was happening was like, you know what we should do? We should beat up the tall guy. That's what we should do.
Right,
So
yeah.
Reggie's a font of great ideas.
It's the beauty of this plan, it's simplicity.
Mike finds it looks like a wall socket keyhole, and surmises that the silver balls are used to unlock this room.
Okay,
Yeah.
this is my least favorite part of the entire movie. Is that fucking light socket, key switch, keyhole, whatever that's supposed to be. It looks terrible. It doesn't look like a movie prop. It doesn't look like anything. And it definitely doesn't look like something that would make someone think, oh, you know those balls that sometimes, if it's a certain type of ball, has little blades that come out? Looks like if you took the ball and had the little blades come out, that it would insert perfectly into... No one's coming to that conclusion.
I guess since it's a little concave, maybe, and that's the only other thing that
If you could put just the ball in it, sure, but like the fact that there are the two prongs.
It just looks stupid is my point there. It looks really stupid. It looks like someone started drawing a smiley face and didn't draw a mouth.
Well, and how confident the tall man is in his plan. Is that kind of like that in the first one? That he's like, no, it's just going to be behind a door. Because who's going to come in here? I have control of this whole place.
Yeah.
Who's going to just be wandering around going into a like an embalming area? I will say, I should probably, full disclosure, I spent a fair amount of my high school at a mortuary. A friend of mine, his dad was the caretaker there. And he was like the night guy before there's pre-internet and all that, whatever. So it's like if something happened, he had a little apartment there, and if a body had to come in, he would get stuff ready for the morticians to actually come in. And he was very much the kind of parent that was like, okay, you teens, you're old enough that I know you're going to be getting into shenanigans, but if you're going to drink or like smoke pot or something, you're going to do it here and you're not going anywhere.
Smart.
And so that's where we did that.
Smart or set up for a horror movie.
But it was cool.
You can only get drunk and do your crazy teenager things in my mortuary.
So after I won Homecoming King, we went and partied at a mortuary, which is just the perfect setup for that. So barring that, I think it's kind of a dumb plan because you don't need that level of security at a mortuary. Like that's run by an intergalactic slaver.
What state was this in, Myers?
This was Nebraska.
Yeah, of course.
I'm not saying this was legal. I'm just saying it was a thing that happened.
Right.
And you could, if you were hanging out in the apartment, you could feel the embalming machine go. It was cool. It was a great, real cool place to hang out. But particularly like later too, when they pull the ball out of the socket at the climactic scene. I guess we'll get there when we get there. But man.
Yeah.
Scientific progress goes boink, I guess.
Liz fights her way out of the crematorium, shoving the attendant into the oven. Rip that guy.
Of the two mortuary employed individuals, he was the less interesting looking one.
Yeah.
That's true.
The other guy had more of a gravitas to him, more of a, and so when that guy perishes, you're just like, okay, whatever.
He was the also ran, yeah.
Then we get just a lot of cross-cutting it here at this point. Like people running around, balls reappearing. A ball chases Mike and Liz. They finally find each other. The other attendant kind of wrestles with Liz. I do like this bit, though, because the ball drills into the attendant, and to get away from it, he chops his own hand off. As the ball sticks the severed hand to the wall. And this is one of those, I distinctly remember this section from cable TV as a kid.
Yeah, it pins his hand to the wall. So, of course, he has to hatchet it off to get away. But the weird thing about all this is that we find out that ball vision is the same as predator vision.
Yes. Yeah, it used to be just red, but they've upgraded the ball circuits, I guess.
Yeah.
Which could you not just pull it out of the hand?
Maybe.
Is that not a thing that could? Okay. Because I mean,
he tries.
I guess
doesn't he try?
Well, people aren't able to pull it out of their head, so fair enough. Can't pull it out of his hand.
That's true. Reg is fighting a graver, and they have a chainsaw fight. And there is another Reggie screaming, "Come on, you mother," which I always enjoy.
I also like the callback to Texas Chainsaw 2, where Reggie's got a chainsaw, a tiny chainsaw, and the graver pulls out a big, long chainsaw.
Referenced again in Mandy, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a good gag. And I guess Reggie, I read in my preparation that Reg did all of his own stunts except when he jumps over the chainsaw.
Yeah, they wouldn't let him do
because
that.
the chainsaw is upright and running, and he does like splays his legs out to the side and jumps right over it. So it's like an inch below the Reg.
Yeah.
And I guess it's the one thing they didn't let him do. He wanted to, and they wouldn't let him.
It would have been funny too if the stuntman would have done it with like, you know, like a full flip or something like that. A very like un-Reg, like just one cut that looked amazing. But no, it is a pretty standard jump and split.
He's like 3 feet taller and absolutely ripped, and then all of a sudden he's Reg again. Yeah.
Then we get the gold ball using a red laser to look for Mike and Liz. And when it starts up, I swear it sounds like the lightsaber ignite.
Oh, absolutely.
Lightsaber.
Yeah.
100%.
It blows up a rat and then chases Mike and Liz, where we get a very Evil Dead style camera.
Oh, yes.
Shutting the doors.
Oh, it's great. And it breaks through 2 doors in a row. Pure Evil Dead 2 style. Yeah, this is the gold ball, and it's got all kinds of Cuisinart shit going on. It's got a laser.
Well, it's got the blades that come out the side that ends up, once they get through all those doors, this gold ball goes at the other attendant that chopped his own hand off and grinds just through all of his guts and up, out, and through his mouth. And it's amazing. It's so unnecessary, and I love it.
Well, it's also because you get the sense that, like, that's not how the ball is supposed to work. It's supposed to hit you in the head, but it hit him in the back. And the fact that he's like just flailing around. And I guess that actor knocked his tooth out during one of these scenes. So he's like, when I see it now, all I can think about is the agony that I was in because of my tooth. But the fact that they run it in reverse, his flailing around just makes it even more uncanny and strange. And I love it.
And the reveal after he's a corpse, when they turn him over and you see that it's like stuck in his mouth and his lips are all cut around it. And it's like, you know, half in him, half out of him. But the best part of that is that the ball is making this like malfunctioning sound. It's like after Ed 209 gets his head blown off, you know, sort of like puppy dog sound.
Absolutely.
Like, I just can't do my thing anymore.
Reggie gets brutalized by the chainsaw guy for a while before finally getting up the upper hand and sawing him in the crotch. More lurkers come after him, and this is where he does get to take care of 4 of them lined up in a row with the quadruple barrel shotgun.
So this movie has good dedication to weapon of choice and a really thorough use of acquired appliances. I feel like they deliberately show us everything that they picked up in the hardware store, like an hour earlier in the movie, being used. Sometimes, you know,
the
like
drill,
just blowing away the Jawas with the shotgun, but they use the drill. They're like, every time they need to do something, the movie really makes a point. It's almost a video game like, where it's like, well, let's access our inventory of items that we got from that earlier scene in the movie. But I like that about it. I like how it makes it feel like that scene wasn't just a throwaway. It's actually like, no, this is really the equipment that they're going to, you know, win this fight with. And we're going to see like every little piece of it get put to use.
See, I could have used just like a little bit more with that shotgun. Even if he's not just using it more, maybe him like wanting to use it, but not having the opportunity or something, just because it was just so cool. I wanted to see it in action a lot.
He just tosses it. He tosses it. He's like, well, this is done now. Single use.
You spent time building that, Reggie.
The other chainsaw guy chainsaws his bullet belt off of him. And so I don't know why he couldn't just pick up a few more bullets out of that belt. But I guess since he lost the belt, he had to throw
Reggie
down the
doesn't look
shotgun.
behind. He's, you know,
there you go.
Always
He's a
moving forward.
force
He's a
that's
shark.
just always moving forward. Yeah, Reggie the shark.
He had Reg if he wanted him, because Reg was like, had his back to him. He was on the stairs, crawling up the stairs. And the Graver still had a running chainsaw. I mean, that was the end of Reg right there. And instead of chainsawing him, he's like, oh, I'll punch him now.
Reg wanted it more. That's what happened.
Eventually, they pull out the ball that was holding the severed hand to the wall, and they run back and use that as a key to get inside the door. So it looks exactly the same as the end of the first one.
Well, I love the callback to the first one also of when they're trying to get the ball out of the hand, that Reggie shows back up. Presumably after they think he's been dead. And no one is that excited to see him. They're like, oh, okay.
Reggie's still around.
Well, I mean, it's honest, at least.
It's very much like, oh, all right, well.
Like, oh, Reg. Oh.
I'm glad that bad things didn't happen to you, but if you just went away, that's okay, too. But yeah, they now we get a redo of the space room scene, which I like. I don't know. I still like the simplicity of the original one a little bit better. Like, they added some like sci-fi lines to this one. But I just like the blank white walls in the first one a little bit more.
Yeah. So once again, people get sucked into so that we can see the red planet beyond. And just like in the first one, we only see this for like 1 or 2 shots. But I like that because I don't want, like, I want my mind to think about what goes on the Red Planet more than I want to see like a city. Like, I don't want to see like a necropolis down there necessarily.
I do. Oh, give me a Red Planet necropolis.
Maybe that might be kind of cool.
Just don't tell me what they're doing. Like, I just like that there's, even if you have a necropolis.
Yeah. If Phantasm 2 was made in 2022, they'd be like, yeah, the tall man's master plan is it's a crypto venture.
Right.
Well,
the Jawas are harvesting Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Well, I also like the fact that because it is seemingly in the middle of nowhere, is this illegal what they're doing? In their dimension or whatever?
In their dimension.
Because it's not just like come on down to tall man slaverinos. It's out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it is. It's on a desert in his planet as well.
Well, I'm sure whatever it is they're doing, it's very important.
Yeah. They're building that necropolis.
We just get a big like kind of final standoff with the tall man and everybody in there. The needle with the hydrochloric acid gets stuck in the tall man's back, which starts running through his veins, and he starts melting. His eyes explode at the end, and I believe even a ball goes right for the tall man's head.
Well, that's before the goop. Mike pulls the sphere out of the keyhole, which makes a pop sound. The way that if Mike was crawling up the walls using plungers, that kind of sound. Yeah. So with the climax of the movie, they just went, no, I don't care. Let's just make this silly. But I do like that, it stabs the tall man in the head and all this blood comes spurting out and he just pulls it off and then crumbles it up. And I guess it was a sponge inside out Mylar balloon. Is how they achieve that effect. So then
that's great.
He throws it away and it's a crumpled piece of metal. And then you get a little more inexplicable tall man lore of the weird bug coming out of his head.
Sure.
Don't know what that's about. Don't care. It's awesome.
Yeah. I love it.
And they don't commit to it either. It's like, it's not as big as an effect like that might have been in the climax of the movie. It's just kind of like, oh, okay, there's some kind of bug coming out of him. It's not like, that we're supposed to believe that's the entirety of who's inside
his next
him, right?
form.
That's his final form. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's at this moment that Liz punctures him with the acid. It's a team effort. Reggie turns the dial to blow rather than suck. And
it's a second reference to that today in my day. I can't believe it.
That's a good day.
But he starts dissolving and just disgusting. I love it. Very gross. Like you see a close of his hand melting. Very body melt, street trash kind of thing.
Great end to the tall man. They make it outside. Alchemy drives up in the hearse. Everybody's hanging out. Mike and Liz are in the back of it. Reggie, of course, is up with his gal up front. She starts twirling her hair seductively and pulls part of her scalp out, which you saw coming a mile away. The hearse swerves. It's implied once again that Reggie is killed at the end here.
Because he's tossed out the side, too.
Yeah.
I like this bit, though. I like that idea of just kill Reggie at the end of every movie.
Yeah. And then, Mike and Liz say just like, it's only a dream. It's only a dream. And of course,
no, it's not.
In the first one, the last scene to me never makes any sense. It's like, it's sort of just undoes everything that preceded it. So it's like, it should be that Reggie's dead, but instead he's alive. And Jody, is that his name?
Jody,
Jody is dead, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All beefcake. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, is the first one we talked about in the last episode, like the first one is so dreamlike just in its execution that it kind of makes sense. But then when it's like, no, it's not. Okay. But the fact that this one, like, it's almost like choosing, I don't know if you ever played Deus Ex, but it's like when the second one came out, it's like, what ending are they going to go for? And like, we'll just do all of them actually have. And it's like, well, that's kind of a cop out, but okay. And it feels like that with this, where it's just like, we decided that the first one was actually, it wasn't a dream, but it's also all that stuff you did dream about was real.
But in a lot of ways, this ending also just plays like a really typical 80s horror ending, which is you've had your climax, you kill the villain in the climax, then you have the happy scene. And this is like Freddy Krueger pulling the mother through the window of the house. Right?
Jason showing up at the end of the first Friday the 13th to pull her out of
it's just the gotcha. These almost feel like a coda. They feel sort of separate from the primary narrative, where it's like, okay, well, it's a horror movie, so obviously we have to end with just actually the bad guy wins.
Right.
Well, it's almost like those like 1940 serials where you'd see the episode would end with a guy driving off a cliff, and they'd be like, when the next episode started, there'd be like a whole scene of him like jumping out and not driving off a cliff. It's like, here's some action, but this isn't going to matter later. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's completely disposable. You know, the next movie we'll start, and Reg will be alive, Mike will be alive.
And that's it. That's Phantasm 2. It came out. It did okay, actually. Didn't do as well as they had hoped it would do because they rushed the release date at the end. But I did see some kind of fun marketing that they did.
This movie made $4 million.
Right.
Well, it opened against Crocodile Dundee 2, a sequel to Arthur, and Short Circuit 2, one of my personal favorites. That all did better than it. Who Framed Roger Rabbit won the weekend it came out, because how are you going to compete with that? And it opened in 9th place, vanishing from the top 10 the following weekend, and had a worse debut than the franchise-ending Poltergeist 3.
Wow, man. That's a rough go for Phantasm.
Well, yeah, this like I said, the studio kind of went, well, whatever. They, I guess during test screenings, the audiences were loving it when they showed it to execs. They burst out laughing during the sphere scenes, and then when the film was over, they were like, "Oh my god, this is one of our movies."
Oh no!
And they just weren't used to making those kind of movies. So
they did do a fun premiere for it because it was kind of interesting to see Angus Scrimm dressed up as the tall man in front of adoring fans. You know, at the premiere of the film, they actually did have something where, as a promotional thing, how many people can you fit inside this hearse? So it was like hearse packing, so all the kids could show up and like pack themselves into a hearse. But yeah, did not jumpstart a franchise like they had kind of hoped would, which is a shame because it's a pretty fun movie.
Yeah, 3 and 4, like the rest of the movies are all direct to video, right?
Yeah. This was the last time there was any sort of budget for this franchise at all.
But is it still? But it's Don Coscarelli throughout, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
And 3 feels like it has some budget to it. There's some, although actually I'm now remembering the ways in which it lags. Yeah. That's the one where they like fight the same 2 or 3 people over and over and
one
over
of those.
again.
The old Hellboy.
The old. I was just gonna mention that.
I think you were the one that pointed that out to me when that movie came out. I was like, oh yeah, that sucked.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always bugged me. Get another creature, Hellboy.
It kind of confirms my suspicion in the first one, how intentional that like dreaminess was. I don't necessarily, I'm more on the side of like, I don't know. I don't think Don Coscarelli is like a bad director necessarily. I know he couldn't do some of the things he wanted to do, but as I said before, there's just a lot of faffing around that doesn't really fit this movie. Like pacing wise, it's very kind of like stop start. But the stuff that's fun is really fun.
Yeah.
It could just be a lot tighter. Yeah, the effects are fantastic.
The Quatu effect, the ball effects, they're all really well done. But yeah, I think Coscarelli's movies are always in that camp of horror that's like right out of the gate, you understand the level that you're at. You know, like when you have a character like Reggie Bannister, when you're going to just introduce a hitchhiking hot girl named Alchemy who's going to immediately be like, have the hots for a guy like that. Like, this is the level we're operating at, right? This is not The Exorcist. This is not The Shining.
Yeah. Having gone through the Jason movies, all the Friday the 13th, and like they keep trying to be something else in good ways and bad. We're like, no, we're going to be, we're going to change the lore. We're going to actually make this really serious or whatever. I like that Phantasm has like, okay, well, we did the first one. That was kind of this more dreamy thing. And this one, we're going to do this other way, but it commits to it. It's going to be like, this is the movie you're seeing. We're not wink, wink. Isn't this kind of stupid? We're not, we're committed to the bit that we're doing. And I like that a lot. Yeah. Even the dumb stuff. They're like, no, we're going to present this to you in a way that's fun, but not like wacky.
Totally. And I think that is the next part of what I was saying about like, it's a goofy ass movie with silly characters and silly plot points, but all of the lore building in it, all of those concepts that you're talking about are completely unique to this series. Like they don't, this doesn't feel like any other horror story that you've seen, you know, like there may be these references to Salem's Lot and some camera work that's very Raimi style, but like the tall man, the whole the lurkers, the gravers, even just, you know, sort of the role that someone like Reggie Bannister embodies within all that story seems totally unique to this series. There's nothing else like it. Yeah. I can't name other franchise that feels like it. And I think that's why it remains so vital.
And I agree with, like you were talking about, or you mentioned Stuart Gordon, and I think that's a very apt comparison, that this kind of falls in that same genre of horror.
Gordon is definitely a step above in terms of he knew how to work with his actors to draw out really dynamic, real performances, you know, whereas Coscarelli movies like this, it's kind of more just like, What?
I mean,
Directed my friend Reggie.
Yeah, I mean, it's Jeffrey Combs versus Reggie.
The stakes don't feel very high, but
oh man, imagine Reggie is Dr. Mordred.
I won't imagine Reggie as Dr.
In fact,
Mordred.
how dare you suggest it? Yeah, I didn't like it as much as the first one, like I said, but it was still fun enough. And I think had I come across it at like your age, Michael, like if I'd come across it as a teen, oh man, I would have been about it. I would have been so down with it. But
the boring faffing about sequences when you're that young, you don't care as much about that. And then the reward of the good scenes in between those is like even amplified and makes the faffing about seem like nothing.
I mean, I definitely I think I like 1 and 2 almost equally, just for different reasons. Just knowing that this is the more action, like kind of fun one with the better effects, and then the other one is the slower, more dreamy, arguably smarter, more original type of film. But I like them, just like I like Alien and Aliens almost the exact same amount.
Well, in both cases, it seems like, and even though in this case it was just Don Coscarelli, but like it seems like in both cases he made the movie he wanted to make. That there wasn't like a whole lot of, and that was sort of the deal. The filmmaker will autonomously fund and produce a film by an agreed upon date that the studio will purchase it upon completed, when it's completion for an agreed upon amount. So basically they were just like, here's your money, and then we'll buy the movie when it's done. And so at the time you'd get a lot of movies that were like, okay, well, we didn't make the movie we sold you, but you promised to buy it. So here you go. So they stopped doing that after a while. But I do like that still gave Don Coscarelli the freedom, some minimal studio involvement, but in general, like he was able to make the movie he wanted.
Before we break, we should talk about the soundtrack for a moment.
Please.
Because something I thought about on this rewatch that I hadn't thought too hard about before is that the soundtrack's actually kind of disappointing compared to the original. And it's funny because with the original being from 79 and this being from 88, man, they both just reflect what was popular at the time, because 79 has this pure prog rock soundtrack with, and the main theme, classic horror style arpeggio, somewhat Exorcist, Tubular Bells inspired, but it's got this full kind of like Pink Floyd style rock backing behind it, which feels more almost like the Argento and Goblin side of things than the American side of horror. And it's great. It's really great. And then this does the classic thing, and this is 88, so you're far enough into the whole weird 80s digital synthesizer era where like all the prog stuff is gone. It's just probably like a Corgam 1 or a Wave Station. All of it has this kind of clean, tinkly digital sound to it. And so that main riff, they still of course use the main riff over and over, but it's just like all the weight sucked out of it. It's just not nearly as impactful as the 79 version. And it kind of bugged me this time. I don't remember ever thinking much about it, but this time I really did notice that. I'm like, it's not a bad soundtrack, but it just really has that sort of workstation late 80s synth quality to it.
I have in my notes that it's like a more sterile version of that soundtrack. Like it's a movie soundtrack now,
and it's just got the requisite wine glass presets going on here all over the place. And it's not terrible. It's just disappointing, really, relative to what came before it, and the fact that they're playing a lot of the same motifs, but in such a different way.
And especially with the first one being just so noticeable for the time, it's hard to follow that.
I mean, arguably the first one, the problem was that was kind of all it had was that main rock song. It was a great song, but I think the movie like leans really heavily on it because they didn't have a whole lot else. But it still worked better overall.
Well, to wrap it up, Michael, where can anybody find you and what you do online, your music?
I would just steer everyone to Bandcamp. That's definitely the best place still, even if they got bought out by those weirdos. But Bandcamp. Dead When I Found Her is on Bandcamp. Michael Arthur Holloway, that's my doom jazz, dark jazz project, also on Bandcamp. And currently, the theme music for this podcast is only heard here exclusively on this podcast.
If whatever else you think about this podcast, please enjoy the music. I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, John and I asked Michael if he could do the music for it, and he came back later with that piece, and we were just like, no notes, done?
Yeah, love it.
Set. So thinking about all the people that died in this film as compared to Friday the 13th, it's a lot different because your main monster is like hacking at our main group of kids, whereas this type of horror movie, it's a bunch of the villains that are getting blown away, and we don't lose all of our people like we do in slasher films. But either way, we are going to memorialize them right now in the in memoriam. Dwarf beaten to death with a shotgun. 7 dwarves killed in house explosion. Talking demon incinerated by flamethrower. Unnamed woman incinerated by flamethrower. Grandma Murphy, played by Ruth C. Engel, stabbed in the chest by Father Myers. Father Myers, played by Kenneth Tygar. Brain drilled by a sentinel. Dwarf, beaten with a statue. Mortician, cremated by Liz. Mortician, played by Mark Anthony Major, killed by a golden sphere. Graver, crotch chainsawed by Reggie. 4 dwarves, shot by Reggie with a shotgun. The tall man, played by Angus Scrim, eyes exploded, system pumped full of hydrochloric acid. So I guess to wrap it up, thank you, Michael, for joining us, talking about Phantasm 2.
Thank you.
We're going to keep on trucking, and next week we'll hit Phantasm 3.
It's all downhill from here.
Oh boy.
But that's the purpose, because it might start to hurt a bit after this.
There's some good stuff inside Phantasm 3, but Myers, if you're upset about the faffing about in this one, it takes a different form in 3. It's not the same type of faffing about, but it has the same end result.
New and exciting ways to faff.
It's really the Hellboy thing that we were talking about earlier. It's this sense of like, really, you're just beating up the same people over and over again.
I hate that.
And then the fourth one of the most memorable Reg scenes is in 4, and it's ridiculous. And then there's some interesting lore shit with the tall man. In it.
Okay, in spite of myself, I like Reg. Like I should not like Reg.
Yeah.
Man, I like
that's
Reg.
The thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I agree completely. I totally agree. That was one of the things that struck me about it when I saw it, even as a teenager. I was like, this weird guy that just doesn't seem like he should be in a movie.
Yeah.
But he is. Yeah. And I kind of like that. Like, I'm kind of rooting for him because he's so just like, why you?
Well, I think some of it also is the fact that just like recently within the last few years, I have become an uncle. And I think he just exudes that uncle energy that I just sort of naturally respond to. I'm like, yes, he's cool now.
Yeah.
And have you seen Ravager?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I
barely remember anything from it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I remember feeling like, well, we had to do this, so we've done
we did
it.
Cool.
We knew we had to do it, but I don't remember it really being anything.
Phantasm 5, contractual obligation.
Yeah. For us.
Great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great. Well, I have that to look forward to.
All right. We can hit stop now.
Yeah. Well, we can probably thank the audience for listening. And then.
Oh, yeah. We got a little off track with everything.
That's all right. But thanks again, Michael, for joining us. I didn't say thank you yet, so let me do that now. Thanks for joining us, and thank you all for listening. And we will catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
This has been a Two Penguins Media production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling and music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find on Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at This May Hurt a Bit Pod and on Twitter at Hurt a Bit. Email us at thismayhurtabit@gmail.com. And if you are so inclined, rate and review us on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.